In today's video, we are going to be covering the topic of parameters in MA2 and what you need to know about them if you want to step out of the on-PC realm and into the real world with your programming. Originally, I wrote up a 4-page script for this video, but I figured there are enough kind of line-by-line tutorial videos on YouTube, and this is a topic I'm actually really interested in, so I figured we would have more of a discussion about the points that I wrote down. So to begin this discussion, why do we even need to be concerned about parameters? What do they do for us? And the main thing that they do is they allow us to output DMX into the real world, outside of an on-PC, computer screen, and control outside things, whether that be actual fixtures connected to DMX lines, media servers, or any kind of third-party pre-visualization software. If you're coming from other control software, you might be used to dealing with licenses in universes, where if you buy a console, you'll get 64 universes out of the box, or you'll get 4 universes out of the box. But MA doesn't really think that way. Because they provide the on-PC and MA3D hardware, and they don't really use a dongle system like some other software developers do, they rely on a system of hardware-embedded licenses to basically get paid for all their hard work for developing all of the awesome software and hardware that I love to use on every show. But I just mentioned that they're not limiting you by the number of universes, so how exactly are they doing it? If you're watching this video, you probably are already familiar with the term DMX channel, and a parameter isn't so different than a DMX channel, but I want to take a second to divorce in your mind the idea of one DMX channel always being one parameter, because there are certain cases where they're not. The lighting fixtures that we use today use all sorts of mechanisms to control the output, shape, and color of the lights that we see on stage. And if we were to take, for example, one of the most useful attributes of a modern moving light, like a pan channel, we simply can't use just one 8-bit channel of control anymore to smoothly program a fixture that is going to move 540 degrees of pan. There just aren't enough pieces of data in an 8-bit control channel to make it look smooth. On most modern lights, you're going to find 2 channels that control that pan movement instead of 1, just because 8 bits just isn't enough to create that fine movement that we want to see, that smooth pan movement. So when they combine those 2 8-bit channels together, we got an 8-bit coarse channel and an 8-bit fine channel, we get a 16-bit resolution for our pan attribute. So that's 2 DMX channels, but in the world of MA, that only counts against 1 parameter in your parameters used count. In fact, in MA, you can go all the way out to 24 bits of resolution for each attribute, and you can change those options in the fixture editor. So when it comes down to it, MA is only charging you when you rent a big control system to control a stage. They're only charging you for the individual attributes, not the DMX channels that control those attributes, which I actually think is a super smart way of doing it, because you immediately have access to all 256 MA universes, so you no longer have to work around sort of hardware constraints that other consoles might impose on you, and you have full access to, patch in ways that make more sense physically and can save you effort when you're actually building the show in reality. Instead of having to cram all of your fixtures in a show into 4 or 8 universes and then trying to figure out with splitters how you're going to get all the data to all of the fixtures out remotely, you can just patch every physical location to a universe and not have to worry about being limited to universes. And to give you some specific examples, like a Parcan or something on a single dimmer channel is obviously only 1 parameter, but if you have something like a moving light that has pan, tilt, dimmer, color wheels, color flags, you could start getting into the 16 to 30 parameter range per fixture. And there are some moving light fixtures out there that once you start adding in framing shutters and rotation, you start getting up into the 60 or 70 parameter count. Okay, now that we've established what a parameter is, let's talk about the process of unlocking them so that you can control fixtures and media servers and visualizers outside of the MA system, how to get that data out of MA and into the real world. Now, I mentioned earlier in this video that you're able to unlock parameters based off of the type of hardware system you have connected to your session. Now, there's a whole range of products in the MA2 control system, and they all behave uniquely when it comes to counting for parameter unlocking. And instead of just reading you off a list of the different hardware pieces and what they unlock and maybe the rules that govern them, I figured we would run through a series of scenarios that I hope will maybe better illustrate exactly what's happening. Let's say, for example, you're following along with one of my super awesome tutorials at home, and you're using OnPC on your computer, and you have no hardware attached, no nothing. You can still create a session, and you can still see everything in MA3D, and you can do all your programming totally for free, which is amazing. How cool is that? But if you want to, like I said, connect external equipment or get that out into the real world, you need to attach some hardware. So a really common thing that will be like the first piece of gear that you'll connect will either be an OnPC command wing or an OnPC node. So you've connected an OnPC command wing, and now you're immediately given access to 2048 parameters, which sounds like a weird number, but that is just 512, the number of channels in a single DMX universe, times 4. So effectively, you're getting 4 full universes of parameters. But remember, you can spread that out over any MA universes that you want, and then output them by ArtNet or streaming ACN, anything like that. Continuing along with our example here, let's say it's a few months later, you're hustling really hard, getting a lot of gigs, and you're carrying your command wing with your computer around all these gigs, and you get booked on a show that has full like 8 universes of lights, and you've done the calculations, and you're not going to have enough parameters with just your command wing and the 2048 that it gives you. Well, first of all, it's not just going to stop outputting completely. You're granted universes in the order of the DMX list. So if you go into the setup and live DMX window, you'll be able to see which universes are granted with your current setup. And if you did end up going to that show with just the command wing and you were, say, 2 universes short of parameters, just those last 2 universes and everything after that in the patch window is not going to be output. Your first 2048 are still going to be totally fine. But you did all the math and you're like, man, I can't make it work. So you go out and you buy an MA2 OnPC 1K node. K as in like kilo, like 1000. And that gives you another 1024 parameters in OnPC. So if we do the math real quick, that is 3072 parameters, because you got the 1024 from the 1K node and the 2048 from your command wing that you've been hustling all over town. And that's awesome. You do the show, you have enough parameters, everybody's happy, and the check clears. Good day. In fact, you've been doing so well at this freelance LD gig that now you've got enough money saved up and you can buy that awesome command wing that's going to give you so many more playbacks to work with. And you've looked on the MA website and you see, okay, well, the command wing unlocks 2048. I know that. The fader wing also unlocks 2048. And I've already got this 1K node. So if I add all those up, we're looking at like over 5,000 parameters. And that's the first big mistake that a lot of people make. There is inherently a rule for OnPC systems that OnPC systems in MA2 will not go above 4,096 parameters. And there's one small asterisk right there. You see it, that little asterisk? And I'll talk a little bit about the one exception to this rule if you stick around to the end of this video and hit the like button down there. So stick around towards the end of the video and I'll talk about that little thing. Because there's one exception to that rule that a lot of people don't know about, and it can definitely be a get out of jail free card sometimes. So that aside, let's talk a little bit more about this OnPC limit. Once you reach that 4,096 limit, that's 8 full universes, which that's actually a lot of lights. That's a pretty big show. But if you want to go above that and start working on real big lighting systems, you need to add a console into your session in order to past that limit. Now you can still keep the command wing and the PC in the session. In fact, I recommend that you do, because once that session is distributed across your network, it provides you an inherent level of backup. So now we've moved above the realm of on PC and into the realm of the consoles, like this one that I have here, perfectly ready for example. But just like with on PC, there are a whole new set of rules for console systems that you need to keep in mind. Otherwise, you could spec an insufficient rig and you might end up not having enough parameters to control, just like with our on-PC example. Once you bring a console into the equation, nothing on the on-PC side counts for parameters anymore. You're restarting basically from scratch with whatever your console's parameters give you. And in the MA2 world, there are four different types of consoles that you can add into your session. You've got the full size, which gives you 8,192 parameters. You have the light, which is the one that I have, that gives you 4,096. You have the ultralight, which also gives you 4,096. And then you have, what's that last one? Yeah, that's right. That's the RPU. And that also gives you 4,096. If you're not familiar with that one, don't worry. A lot of us aren't. It's basically just a console that is fit into a little rack mount form factor. So any one of those four will get you into a console-based session, and then you can leave all that on-PC stuff in the dust. And maybe you noticed this, but the full size gets twice as many parameters as the other consoles in that system. It's kind of like a side benefit to buying the biggest, most expensive MA2 console in the line. Yeah, the fourth touchscreen and the extra bank of faders is nice, but there is a lot of value in that extra starting point with parameters. And this is a super important point, because one of the most common misconceptions that I see, especially with people who are new to using and speccing and building rigs and control systems with MA, is that consoles do not add to each other in the same session. So I can't add two MA2 lights together in the same session and combine their parameters. It just doesn't work that way. Instead, the session is going to identify the largest console that is connected. So if I had like an MA2 full size and an MA2 light all connected together in the same session, the session's going to look at everything and say, oh, okay, you've got an MA2 full, an MA2 light. Well, the MA2 full has 8,192 parameters, so that's going to be our starting point for adding on with NPUs. It's not going to count those 4,096 from the console. I know it's kind of a point of contention. I kind of understand why it works that way, but at the same time, I also wish that maybe you'd get something for having that console connected. Instead, if you want to continue adding parameters and control even bigger systems, you're going to need to add more NPUs. And if an NPU isn't considered a console, which it's not, by the way, you can't start with an NPU and then continue adding NPUs until you reach the 15 NPU maximum and get all those parameters. You need to have a console to start a console session and then add on from there. But what does an NPU do anyways? It's exactly what the name implies, network processing unit. It helps distribute the calculation load of the entire show file. And I've noticed that when I have NPUs connected to a session, things just seem to work more smoothly on the actual desk that I'm using. The interface, everything seems a little snappier. So it's helping reduce the workload on the consoles. In addition to helping with processing and calculating all of these parameters that you're unlocking, it also has 8 XLR DMX 5-pin outputs on the back. I don't recommend using NPUs for DMX outputs unless you're like touring with a ground package and that's kind of serving as both your unlock parameter device and your DMX home run. That situation is a little bit different, but if you're designing a control system, generally I like to keep the NPUs out at front of house, 1 or 2 or 3 in a nice little tidy rack next to me, and then have it all connected out at front of house for the parameters, and then use nodes, either MA nodes or streaming ACN nodes, on stage to distribute the data where it needs to go. So that's all fine and dandy. Let's say you've got a huge festival show that you are running. You're in charge of it. You're out at front of house and you got a rack of 3 or 4 NPUs next to you, and you've got an MA2 full size, and you've got a show that has like 20,000 parameters, and everyone's having an awesome time. But all of a sudden you lose power to the NPU rack and they all go dark. Okay, well, what happens to all your parameters? Do they just disappear? Do those universes just turn off? Well, no, they don't. And if you remember earlier in the video, once again, I said it's a good idea to have other members in your session. It's for instances like this that it's important to remember that your parameters stay alive as long as the session is alive. It's a bit comical to think about, but I could be sitting out at front of house with that huge festival stage we were just talking about with a laptop and a full size and that rack of NPUs. I could disconnect all of the NPUs. I could take the console and roll it out of the building and roll the NPUs out too. And as long as my computer was still running MA and was a part of that session, I still get all of the parameters of that session on the laptop. Now, of course, that only lasts until you either turn the computer off or the session dies or you close the session yourself. But that's a feature that's built into the whole idea of having a session and having parameters unlocked across the whole session. It means that your whole show won't go down just because someone trips over a power cable or an NPU crashes. I know I said at the outset of this video that I didn't want to just be reading a spreadsheet or a graphic and talking about what different products unlock how many parameters, but it is useful to know what every little piece of hardware does. So I'm going to link to the page in the MA manual where you can see exactly what unlocks what. Keep in mind that the nodes, there are 2 flavors of nodes in the MA system. You have MA nodes, and then you have MA on PC nodes. And those on PC nodes come in 2 different parameter unlocking amounts. You got the 1K and the 2K. If it's just a node, it doesn't unlock parameters. It's instead meant to be a remote node that you use to output DMX, much like you would with an ArtNet or a streaming ACN node. It's just instead that node speaks MANet, which is a huge advantage in and of itself. And since you stuck around all the way to the end of this super long, somewhat technical, maybe not, hopefully not too technical video, we'll talk a little bit about that asterisk that I was talking about earlier. This is one of the things that blew my mind when I found out, because typically in MA world, a rule is a rule. It's a very German way of constructing things, but there is an exception to this 4096 on PC parameter cap. If you have a PC connected to 2 NPUs, you will get both of those NPUs full parameter counts added together for a total of 8,192. But you can't continue to add NPUs. It's just those first 2 that count towards your parameters. It's just a fun little Easter egg in the software. I didn't believe it when I heard it, but it turns out it's true, and it's actually an intentional kind of get out of jail free card if you need more on PC parameters and all you have is NPUs. And there is one other weird thing about on PC, and that is that command wings don't add to each other. So if you have 2 command wings, you're still going to be capped out at 2048. I'm not sure why that is. I feel like that's not, that might be like a limitation of the software rather than an intentional feature. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this discussion about parameters in this episode. If you did, drop a like down below. And if I screwed something up, don't forget to tell me down in the comments section. And if you haven't noticed, the past 2 weeks, I've been running a very regular live stream schedule. So if you have not checked those out, there is a link down below for the full schedule. And if you're watching this the day that it's uploaded, I will be live streaming later, both on YouTube and on Twitch. You can find, again, the links in the description. I ordered something in the mail. I'm going to make a video on it later. But one of the things that was included in the box was this Grand MA1 DVD. And it is in like pristine, mint condition. And during the live stream tomorrow, I'm going to see if I can find something in my possession that plays DVDs still, and I thought it'd be fun if we watched along together that video while I'm doing some repairs on some other gear. So if you want to come hang out with all of us in the chat, and I mean, what else are you gonna do? We're under lockdown. Come on, just come hang out. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my content. It means a lot to me. And if you can't make it over to the live stream later today, I'm sure I'll see you in the next video.